come to the right place at the right time with the right person. Thank you for coming to my YouTube channel. Today, we are going to start our French pronunciation series, starting with silent letters in French, right? And just in case you didn't know or might have forgotten, you're learning this with the easy language. All right? So, without further ado, let us begin. First, let us first give credits to Slides Media for the presentation template and for the images you're going to see throughout this PowerPoint, right? On Splash. Big up on Splash, big up Slides Media. All right, so now for our lesson. So the first thing you're going to need to know is the letter H. The H in French is silent. Therefore, H is never pronounced during the articulation of a word. So, some prime examples of that is these words here. These are some examples to show you that H is silent. So we have right? Note that it's not hum, it is because you're only pronouncing from the O, right? The H is silent. Here you have histoire and not histoire, histoire, and hôpital. So we have homme, histoire, and hôpital. I'm going to repeat it one more time for you guys. Homme, histoire, hôpital. All right, so from here you can see that the H is silent and is never pronounced, right? When you say these words, right? H is also silent in words with TH. Thus, TH is pronounced like T. Examples of this are mathématique, mathématique, thème, T. All right, let me say it slowly so you guys can hear clearly. Mathématique, thème, T. So you can see with words with TH, we don't pronounce the H, right? So it gives you a T sound. Words that have TH, you're only going to hear the T, right, in the word. So mathématique, thème, T, right? All right, so hope that there is clear. Let's continue. So from here, we got silent letters at the end of words. So let me see what's going on here. So one of the silent letter at the end of words is D. D, the letter D. So here we have froid as an example. Chaud, d'accord, right? Note that it's not froide nor chaude. It is froid, chaud, d'accord. As you can see, the D at the end of the word are not pronounced. These at the end of words are not pronounced, right? Then the next silent letter we're going to look at is G, right? So examples of this are long, long, like it's long, c'est long, right? And we have son, right? So we have long and son. So yes, long and blood. The next silent letter here is P, and examples of this are beaucoup, right? Sometimes I hear people say beaucoup. No, 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 no. It is not beaucoup. It is beaucoup. 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 Then we have drap, and coup. All right, coup. As you can see, whenever I pronounce these words, you cannot hear the P at the end. All right, so the next letter we're going to look at, which is silent at the end of words, which I tend to hear some students pronouncing, it's S, right? I know in Spanish, the S is pronounced, but in French, we do not pronounce S's. We do not do that here. We don't pronounce S's in French, right? So we have exprès, exprès, right? Toi and vous. All right, I'm gonna do that again. Exprès, toi and vous. Exprès, toi and vous. All right. Next letter we're going to look at is T, the letter T. So examples, right, that shows that the letter T is silent at the end of words are abricot, abricot, salut, salut, and we have vin, abricot, salut, vin, abricot, salut, vin. All right, so the next letter from here is X. X at the end of words also is not pronounced. So we have de as an example, pris, époux. De, pris, époux. De, pris, époux. All right. So, final letter we're going to look at here is Z. Z, right? I have one example. I don't think there's a lot of words in French that really end with Z like that, but this is one example that we could find. So the word riz, right? Riz, riz. I know some people can't get the French R's pronounced, so it's like riz, 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 right? It's just riz and not riz. I heard students say this before, but it's not that. It is riz, riz, riz. All right? So, on to the next page. Well, in some languages, even though there's normally rules in languages in general, right? Well, particularly in French, we're talking about here, to certain rules, there are exceptions, right? So, for the rules whereby D is usually silent, G is usually silent, P is usually silent, there are a few words where those letters are pronounced. One example, let's start with D. We're going from D and come back down. So an example of an exception with D, where the D is pronounced, is the word sud. Sud. Sud, right? You can hear the D being pronounced in this word. It is not su, right? Because normally when you do not pronounce the D, if you don't pronounce the D for this word, it would be su, right? But because the D must be pronounced for this word, as this particular word is an exception to the rule that we just went through, right? Because that's the general rule in French that D's are not pronounced at the end of words. So this word here, sud, right? The D is pronounced in this word. That's an exception. Another exception, well, that was for D. For G, the exception we have is grog. Grog, right? Grog. That's the exception for G. For P, we have cap and sleep. Cap, sleep. Cap, sleep. All right. So you have cap and sleep for P. So these are the exceptions for P, right? P is typically silent. Always keep that in mind. G is typically silent. D is typically silent. But for these are just exceptions. So just learn. You have to commit these to memory. All right. All right. Moving on to S. The exceptions we have for that is fils and bus. I know in some schools they still say autobus. All right. But it's fils. You hear that S song at the end. Fils, bus. Right? Fils and bus. All right. Fils, bus. Next letter is T. The exceptions for this one here is en fait. Listen carefully. En fait. It sounds like a fete that you go to. I know a lot of people, a lot of you Caribbean people like to go crazy at your fetes. So it's pronounced like fete. Yes, the English word fete. En fait. Right? This is an exception for T. En fait. Ouest. Ouest. And wheat. Wheat. Right? Wheat, like the word wheat or creamy wheat. I know a lot of you people like to eat that, and some you don't, but that is how to remember this. Wheat, wheat. So you have en fait, ouest, wheat. En fait, ouest, wheat. All right. So for X, for exceptions for X are six and index. Six, index. Six, index. All right. And for our final silent letter, we have our final silent letter here, Z. All right. The exception for that is gaz. 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 All right. So these were a few exceptions for the letters that are usually silent at the end of words. All right. Continuing on. All right. So we on to ENT at the end of verbs. Right. So if you guys remember, right, in third person plural, right, those verbs third person plural end in ENT. So ENT at the end of verbs, right, the combination of these three letters um, can usually be found don't know what that B is missing, can usually be found at the endings of verbs in the third person plural. However, this sequence of letters helps to give sound to consonants which are usually silent at the end of a word. Now, you guys remember, we talked about D being silent at the end of a word. So here, what happens here when you add these are verbs, by the way, because we're talking about ENT at the end of verbs. ENT on adjectives and adverbs are pronounced, and it's usually pronounced on. However, on verbs, you do not pronounce the ENT, right? The ENT only gives sound to the consonant, right? Which are usually silent at the end of a word. So in this case, we have the word bavarde, right? If there was no ENT, this would be pronounced as bavard. But the ENT gives the sound bavarde, right? So the D is pronounced. You can see the same thing with the verb vendre, right? Vendre. As you can hear, the D is being pronounced because of the ENT. The same thing with this word here, reste, reste, reste. So we have bavarde, vendre, reste, bavarde, vendre, reste. Right? So you can see the consonants are actually being pronounced because they are being followed by ENT. The ENT is what gives the consonants their sound at the end of the conjugation, right? The ENT is not pronounced, but the ENT helps give letters that are usually silent, right? It gives song to these consonants, right? So here is some reading practice for you guys. Come on. Don't think we can go through this lesson without some reading practice. You got to get your reading practice in. All right. So I am going to read the entire passage that you can see here. It's about, I think, 4 paragraphs long. Yes, 4 paragraphs long. So let's start. Pendant le mois de janvier, mon époux et moi avons décidé d'aller à Paris. Nous y sommes allés en avion et le trajet était hyper long. Après 9 heures de voyage, nous sommes arrivés à l'aéroport de Paris. Charles de Gaulle. Il était très grand et impressionnant. Nous étions remplis d'enthousiasme d'être là. Après avoir récupéré nos bagages, nous avons pris un taxi pour aller à notre hôtel. Malheureusement, le chauffeur conduisait comme un malade et notre enthousiasme d'être en France a brusquement pris fin puisque nous avons eu un accident. C'était absolument horrible. J'avais juste mal à la tête, au cou et au dos. Par contre, mon mari s'est gravement blessé et il a perdu beaucoup de sons. Et malheureusement, le chauffeur est mort. Quelques minutes après, une ambulance arrivée et a transporté mon époux et moi à l'hôpital. Après 2 semaines d'hospitalisation et après avoir payé l'équivalent de 2 semaines de factures de soins médicaux, nous n'avions plus d'argent et nous étions obligés de retourner à notre pays. C'était un vrai cauchemar. Je ne sais pas pourquoi notre voyage dans un endroit aussi merveilleux est très vite devenu une tragédie. All right, guys. So now it is your turn to read. Yes, haha. Thought you was getting away, nah. Uh-uh. It's your turn to read now. So it's your turn to read the passage. So I'm going to start from the top here. Oh, oops, my bad. So, from pendant le mois de janvier, that's where you're going to start. I'm going to give you time to finish the 2 paragraphs before I move on to the next line. All right? Ready, set, go! All right, let's move on to the next page, the next slide. Alright, guys, well done. Just after you can review the video as much as you possibly need to in order to, if you didn't get the pronunciation correctly, you can just review what I did and do it over and over and over. The key part of this is to practice. Don't worry about the little mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, even I. All right. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me at theeasylanguage@gmail.com. Merci pour votre attention et à plus.